The majority of the work that I do is coaching with musicians and helping people become their best selves. I do host the radio show. I do it for about a total production time, maybe 2.5 hours a week. But yeah, the appetizer's kind of taken a little bit of a curve in the road with some other things that have been going on. Wrote a book recently that'll be coming out next year, and so that's taken a lot of focus. But in terms of the radio show, I started back in the day when there wasn't Spotify and there wasn't Pandora and there wasn't like the 100 million different options for people to listen to music. And back in the day, we had FM radio. It's kind of how a lot of music got disseminated. There was a little bit of web radio, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And so I was really annoyed with, and I'm sure people are still annoyed with this when it comes to pop music and pop radio, the fact that the same 15 songs are played ad nauseum over and over and over and over and over again. And I turned on I was working for a radio station at the time, and I decided, what if I could play music that I actually liked and that my friends actually liked, and put that on the radio. And so I pitched this idea to my boss at the time, and he was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just see what happens. And it turned into something that a lot of college people liked, and young adults liked, and it turns out a lot of people that are in their like 50s and 60s liked it too, because people are culturally diverse. So that's how the appetizer was born. I did there's a guy that was passing through. I live in a little bitty town. You guys are in Canada. I live in a little bitty town in Texas called Abilene. And little bitty meaning there's like 150,000 people. And there's this guy that was driving through that works for the Dallas Morning News. He was driving through one night, happened to be listening to the radio, happened to be listening to my show, and happened to hear a good friend of mine and fell in love with her music. And when he got back to Dallas, he looked her up and did an interview with her. And she messaged me and said, hey, there's this guy that's in Dallas that's writing about me because he heard me on your station or on your show. And I was like, holy cow. So she gave me his information. I contacted him. We had a really good conversation. We've become very good friends since then. But he said something to me that changed my life. And he said, why can I not hear your show in Dallas? And I said, well, because that's because I'm in Abilene. And he was like, well, you need to figure out how to get to Dallas, man. You need to figure out how to get your show to Dallas, because it's that high quality. You deserve to be heard out here, and you deserve to be heard in other places. So you need to figure out what you need to do. Well, that was a daunting challenge, because no, I'll just say it. I didn't really believe. I believed in my product, but I didn't believe in myself. And so when I started the process of contacting other radio stations to get my show picked up, I did the same thing that countless musicians do. I sent this generic, bland blanket email to a zillion people, and I got literally zero response. And I couldn't figure out why I got zero response, because some of the people I knew, like I knew them on a first name basis. We'd had dinner and drinks and knew each other's phone numbers. I knew their kids, and I was like, why is my friend not writing me back? So then I started learning about contacting people and learning about messaging. And that taught me a lot of lessons. I ended up writing a book about it called The DIY Musician's Radio Handbook. All that came from going through the process of contacting media, contacting radio, figuring out what actually works with getting people to respond to you and getting people to say yes. So I hope I've given you a little bit of an insight into radio show stuff and all that other thing.
Yeah, because that leads into growth farming, which is what you're best known for in the independent music circles.
Yeah, so the name, my former wife and I would do a lot of gardening. She's a master gardener, so I learned just about everything about gardening from her. But I was outside in the garden one day, and I was thinking, like, there's so many similarities to this work and relationship building. I wonder how I could translate that over, if that would make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one day I was given this challenge to contact somebody that I thought was so far outside of my circle of influence that I'd never be able to talk to him. And that person was Seth Godin, one of my heroes. And so I reached out to Seth Godin. I said something very specific. And I kind of unconsciously, I did the things that I teach other people how to do. I just wasn't thinking about, what am I going to get out of this thing? I just wanted to tell him that I value his work and I think that what he does is outstanding. And I said a couple other things, but I did make a little mention at the end, like, I don't know if you do podcasts, if you'd ever consider doing it. I have one. I talk to creative people. We need what you have to say. And I sent it off, and then I messaged a friend of mine who had challenged me to contact somebody that was out there. And I said, hey, dude, I did it. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm probably never going to hear from him. 3 minutes later, Seth Godin emailed me back and said, thank you so much for your kind words. That really means a lot. I usually don't do podcasts, but you have me intrigued. What are you doing next week? And I thought, well, shit, dude, I'm talking to you. So he came on my podcast. Growth Farming was birthed out of our conversation. And you can hear it on my podcast, which is the DIY Artist Route. But I'll tell you what he said. The thing that I'd said to him that I think piqued his interest was I referred to him as the modern marketing Moses, because most of us in the creative space, and I would want to say in the entrepreneurial space, small business space, feels like we're kind of in this perpetual desert where every day we're just trying to figure out how to move forward and get to this promised land of success that we read about in all the big magazines, and, the big superstars on YouTube and everybody that's built their, $5 million businesses just starting from scratch. And one day they woke up and everything worked out for them. Seth Godin doesn't talk about that. Seth Godin talks about taking incremental steps and having a growth mindset, which is trying something and taking a leap. Actually, he's got a book about that. But it's about finding your special place and being uniquely you, and taking incremental steps forward. So in my email to him that I sent, I said, I feel like I'm in this perpetual desert, but I feel like you are Moses in that desert, saying, hey, the promised land is this way. If you'll take one step in my direction, I'll help you get there. One step at a time. We're not going to get there overnight. It's going to take us a little while, but I'll help you get there. And every day when I read his emails, which are his blog posts, I feel like I can take one step in that direction. So that's what I said in the email that I sent to him that intrigued him. And so my last question to him in our podcast was, I said, if you were to give a creative person one piece of advice to reach the promised land, putting on your Moses hat or whatever, what would you say? And what he said was, it's the idea that the grass is always greener somewhere else that gets you in trouble. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and be Miles Davis, where everybody knows your name and you never have to worry about anything ever again. What you need to do is realize that you have all the green grass you're ever going to need right in front of you. What you need to do is farm it and not go hunting. Now that's almost a direct quote. When you listen to the podcast, you'll be like, dude, that's exactly what he said. Yeah, because I've re-listened to that phrase and re-listened to those questions and those answers a zillion times. Like I want that to be like bread that I put inside my body, like that it's that nourishing. So that conversation changed the way that it shaped the way that I've been thinking about relationship building, and it put a frame around this idea of, I've got a garden, I've got relationships. What does it look like if I treated my relationships like I treat my garden, where I'm regularly out there and I'm taking out the things that aren't necessary, but I'm putting in things that are, and I'm regularly feeding it, I'm regularly nourishing it, I'm making sure that like there's a reciprocal connection here. And then when it produces fruit, I can do something with that fruit, and then I can go plant somewhere else, and I can continue to cultivate and diversify and grow and grow and grow. And that's where the idea of growth farming comes from. So when it comes to like the work I do with creative folks, like the people that are watching this, I help people grow their growth farming, grow their garden of relationships. And really it doesn't start with your relationships with other people. Truthfully, growth farming starts with your relationship with yourself. Because if you don't have a strong foundation within yourself, and you're not, I'm going to use the self-help personal development lingo here, but there's something about loving yourself and having that self-appreciation that impacts everything that you do. I've got a friend that I had a conversation with, and I wrote about this on an article I wrote on Medium, for business folks. But a friend of mine recently told me this really great quote. I'll share it with you. He said, "Disparity is an awful stench, and everybody can smell it. And no one wants to be around you if all you can talk about is what's going wrong." In our creative spaces and in our business spaces and in the spaces that we live in as human beings, we spend a lot of time thinking about the things that aren't working. And then if we focus on that and all we do is talk about it, it creates this awful stench. Kind of like that kid on Peanuts that walks around with the blanket that's really smelly, and he's got the little dust stuff. Somehow they keep him in their circle of friends, but my guess is that the kid probably doesn't smell too good. Well, that's what a bad attitude does. A bad attitude is birthed out of having very negative beliefs about yourself. And so, growth and success is a matter of connecting with other people and building strong relationships, but it's also a matter, excuse me, of loving yourself and taking care of yourself and having confidence and boldness and strength to go out and do those things.
Thank you so much. So talk about your book now. You have a book that's coming out soon.
Well, have you been in a relationship, Clara, where everything was working and then suddenly it wasn't?
Yeah.
Okay. Or have you ever been in a relationship where suddenly it ends and you didn't know what happened and you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's what my book is about. It's not about the process it's not about relationships that end. It's about how to go through loss and how to go through pain and how to go through difficulty and it not break you. So, so my marriage ended last year. It happened out of nowhere. I've been married for almost 12 years. And one day she was just like, "Yeah, I don't love you anymore. I'm done." And it didn't matter how much we were best friends, or at least I thought we were. Yeah, it didn't matter how much I tried to keep her here. Like, she had just decided she was done with. And so I spent all of last year putting myself back together. Now, about 10 years ago, I mentioned a minute ago that, like, the difficulty I had with contacting media and stuff back in the day was because I didn't believe in myself. And that was a difficult thing. I used to struggle really bad with fear. Fear just gripped me, and I was a pretty insecure person. I've never had a problem making friends. I've never had a problem connecting with people. But I get to a certain place where, like, my insecurity would kick in, and I would, like, get nervous that my friend would see the person that I saw, see this skinny little dude, and be like, "Oh, I don't want to have anything to do with you." Like, that's how I saw myself. And I had this experience that really, like, freaked me out, and it made me take a proactive step of overcoming my lifelong fear of people, and in particular, a lifelong fear of getting beat up. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but I'm a grown ass man. I'm 36 years old. At the time, I was 27, and I was at a street corner, and I didn't cross the street because I was afraid this guy was going to beat me up and jump me. And so as I was driving home, and this little voice kicked in my head and said, "Dude, how long are you going to live like this? You're a grown ass man that can't cross the street. You got to figure out something to do about this." So I realized that was right. And so I joined a boxing gym to overcome my fear of getting beat up. And while I was in this boxing gym, I did learn how to box. I'm still not a good fighter. Probably never will be. That wasn't the point. I overcame my fear. That was the point. But while I was training with Coach Rivas in our club, Coach Rivas instilled in me three very core principles that have guided my life and my business moving forward. Those principles are be first, be uncommon, and be solid. And so last year, right when everything went to hell for me in my relationship, um, I was in the first part of writing a book about those three principles, and I was applying it to business, and I was applying it to direction and everything. And I'd written the first part, which was about be solid, and I sent it to a friend of mine who has a publishing company in Georgia. And I was like, hey, I don't know if I can do anything with this, but you've got a lot of clout in the publishing world. Do you think that there's anything here? And then right after that, I found myself in a completely different place than where I've been before. And this lady I've known for a while, and I was telling her about what was going on, and she was like, you know what, this is outstanding work. The only problem is you don't have a book here. You have 3 books. You need to release it as a trilogy, but you need to start with this Be Solid thing, and you need to go on this journey because this is where you are right now. And so what Be Solid is about is it's about rebuilding yourself after you've experienced loss. Now, loss isn't necessarily the loss of a relationship. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be, a personal struggle that you've gone through, something like that.
Something where the rug is pulled out from under you.
Yeah. So I equate the whole experience to kind of like a hurricane just suddenly blowing into your life and like decimating everything. And the hurricane can either destroy you, or you can be like an oak tree that's planted with really deep roots and really strong core, and provide strength for other people even while your life is going through a really difficult period. So I still love my former partner. I'll always love her. I'm not connected to her anymore. I won't say anything bad about her because she's a beautiful, amazing person. But what happened was it was devastating to me. But at the same time, going through that process made me solid. It made me who I am now, and I'm doing things that are bigger and better and more awesome than ever before. Because here's the thing: difficulty can break you, or it can make you into gold. Like gold that is purified and has the highest value has to go through fire. It's not just mined out of some sort of mine somewhere and then
Those gosh darn birds. Diamonds are formed under pressure.
Yes, diamonds are so anything that's almost anything that's of value, especially when it comes to like stuff that you would wear in jewelry or whatever. Anything that's of value is mined out of a place that comes from difficulty and comes from struggle. And so
I like that. I'm gonna take that.
So that's the Be Solid is actually about how to go through difficulty and come out more refined, come out solid, and not be destroyed by it.
D. Grant Smith, I'm giving you a virtual hug right now.
Oh, thank you.
And right before you go, I just want to ask if you have any tips for mental wellness, for artists, for anything. Just some last couple like one-liners or little quick tips you can give.
One-liners.
Or just quick tips, do's and don'ts, any kind of thing like that to tie into this before we sign off on this lovely interview. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So here's something that I first off, before I say this, if you have any questions or there's anything I've said, and I think I've kind of rattled on a good bit, and I apologize for that. But if there's anything I've said that's really struck a chord with you, and you'd like to know more, you'd like to know how to do it more, you'd like to just ask me a question, hopefully Clara will give my contact information. I'd love to talk with you.
Link in the description of the video.
Awesome. I am serious about relationship building. That's not just a phrase I use. I am serious about growth farming. I'm serious about farming with you. That's not just a brand. It is my mission and purpose in life to love and to help other people love more, and we do that through relationships. Um, on that subject, I'm going to quote Dale Carnegie. If you are somebody that's trying to figure out how to grow your your offering, trying to get in front of more people, trying to broaden your outreach. This is something I quote in my first book, The DIY Musician's Radio Handbook, a lot. But Dale Carnegie said this, and he said this in 1933 in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He said, you can gain more friends in 2 months showing an interest in other people than you can in 2 years trying to get other people interested in you. And most of what we see in marketing and most of what we see in especially social media is everybody trying to get other people interested in them. And it might look like it's working, but it's really not, because our attention spans used to be the human attention span was 8 seconds. This was about 3 years ago. And they said, because there was this thing about who has the longer attention span, a goldfish or a human.
I was gonna make a
Well,
joke about goldfish.
yeah.
Punch.
Well, now the human attention span is about 4.5 seconds. So goldfish have a longer attention span than we do, which means that if all we're doing is just trying to like shout at the top of our lungs and get people to pay attention to us, you've got about 4.5 seconds of people. Yeah, you got about 4.5 seconds on average. But it's human psychology and it's basic human nature that we care more about what other people say when they first show an interest in us. So if you talk to somebody and you ask really good questions, become a practitioner of asking good questions. There's a lot of resources that you can go to for that. If you'd like some help, contact me and I'll let you know. But the more curious you can be about other people, the better it's going to be for you to build relationships with others, and the stronger those relationships are going to be, which is really where the meat and potatoes comes down to being successful. This is not just about knowing a zillion people. It's about them knowing you back and you having a strong connection. So the better you get at doing that, not the more you get at doing it, the better you get at doing that, the more successful you'll be.
Thank you very, very much.